So I had a client who hired me to rent out his property and promised to pay me after the job was done. However, he decided not to pay me after all the work was completed. Let me tell you what happened. I was selling a detached house at 6th Avenue, and this guy came to view the property. He liked the way I presented the house, so he asked if I could help him rent out his property at Yishun. So I thought, why not? He also wanted me to sell that property at the same time, but the price was too high and no one wanted to buy it. That was fine with me. So shortly after, he asked if I could find a tenant for him, so I did. 2 weeks later, I found him a nice French family to take the place. We settled all the documents, including the tenancy agreement, stamp duty, checking of the validity of the tenant's pass, inventory list, tenant deposit, and the advance rental. So the tenant moved in, and that is where the nightmare began. As you guys know, there is something called the minor repair clause when it comes to renting the property. So just to let you know, the property has been vacant for 1 year, and shortly after the tenants have moved in, things started to break down. Now, this was simple and basic things like light bulbs, air conditioning not being cold, and so on. The aircon was very old, around 20 years old, and it hasn't been changed since day one. So the landlord was actually very diligent in helping with the minor repair at first, but then for some reason he decided not to adhere to it anymore, and he demanded that I be the communication channel between him and the tenant. He didn't want to speak to the tenant anymore. So I was fine with that. So every time he had something to say to the tenant, he would tell me, then I would have to pass on the message to the tenant. Now this went on for quite a while, and he told me that he will only pay me after all the minor repair clause has been settled, which I thought was very, very fair. Every time I completed a milestone, he would just demand me to do more and eventually not pay me the commission after all the things I have done for this transaction. Now, he even demanded that I write an official eviction letter to the tenant, even though I advised him that I'm not a trained professional to write legal letters. He insisted that I sign off the eviction letter under my name because I was his consultant representing him in this transaction. He didn't even want to sign off the eviction letter himself. So I politely told him to get a lawyer to do this because this is, number one, not within my job scope and definitely not within my professional capacity to get this done. So every step of the way, he would set a new milestone for me to do before he would pay me. But every time I completed a milestone, he would demand for me to do more. So eventually, he decided not to pay me altogether. Now, this story is a lesson for both agents and landlords to recognize the job scope and what should be done. So for landlords, it is important for you to understand that agents work on commission and we don't have a basic salary. So I think you should be fair in compensating your agents after they have rendered their service to you, and it is definitely not fair for you to demand for them to do extra work and altogether not pay them. And for agents, I think it's also important for you to recognize what you should be doing for your clients. And if you decide to want to give your clients extra service, it's definitely good, but also make sure that you are fairly compensated at the same time. So I hope we can all learn from this situation, and hopefully nobody ever would have to go through this same thing as I did.